Hi, welcome to another edition of Healthy Pros Expert Series. Menu compliance is a huge topic in child nutrition, and we could talk about this for days because there is so much to know. For this video, I wanted to cover the topic of calculating the meat alternate and grain minimums for the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. If you have menu planning software like Healthy Pro that calculates this for you, that can be super helpful. But many people aren't actually aware of how they are calculated or what to do when the menu is not in compliance. So I'll explain how this works and we'll go through a few menu examples together. My name is Jessica and I'm a customer success coach at Healthy Pro. I'm a registered dietitian and I've been in the field of child nutrition for 13 years. I've worked for a food service management company, a state agency, and now with Healthy Pro, and I love being in a role where I can support child nutrition professionals and the important work you do every day to feed kids. While menu compliance isn't the most exciting topic, I love talking about it, so let's get started. We'll start with the meal patterns. This is just a snapshot of the USDA meal patterns for the School Breakfast Program and the National School Lunch Program. You can find the full meal pattern charts on the USDA website, or your state agency probably has meal pattern charts you can use as well. And this is for a 5-day week. If you serve more or less than 5 days a week, there's a different chart available for that. As you know, there are 5 meal components we are required to offer. And for each grade group, there are certain amounts that are required to be offered for each meal component. The first number is the weekly amount, and the second number in parentheses is the daily amount. For some of the meal components, this is very simple. And if you meet the daily requirement, then you also meet the weekly requirement. Like fruit at breakfast, if you offer the 1 cup minimum per day, you'll meet the weekly minimum of 5 cups. But for grains and meat alternates, that is not the case. The daily minimum for the K through 8 grade groups is 1 ounce equivalent. And if you just met the daily minimum, you'd have a weekly minimum of 5. But as you can see here, the weekly amount for grains and meat alternates is higher than that. So throughout the week, you'd need to offer more than just the 1 ounce daily minimum in order to meet the weekly minimum. You'll also notice that for these 2 components, the weekly amount is a range. The first number is the weekly minimum, and the second number is the weekly maximum. But USDA waived these maximums back in 2013, so you are free to exceed the maximums, but you do need to meet the minimums. We're going to look at a lunch menu for the K through 5 grade group where both the grain and meat alternate daily minimum is 1 ounce equivalent and the weekly minimum is 8 ounce equivalent. This is much simpler for menus that offer only 1 entree. First, we'll ensure that the daily minimum is met, which it is. On each day, we're offering at least 1 ounce of both meat and grains. And for the weekly minimum, we'll add the daily amounts together. So for this menu, the weekly total for meats is 8 ounces, and for grains, the weekly total is at 7.5 ounces, which is less than the 8 ounce minimum. So now we do some troubleshooting. Looking at my days that are lowest in grains, on Tuesday, I could add a breadstick with the spaghetti with meat sauce. For the chicken quesadilla on Wednesday, I could look for a 10-inch tortilla instead of an 8-inch. Or on Friday, I could double up on the pizza sticks and serve 2 sticks instead of 1. Of course, we need to consider things like cost and calories, saturated fat, and sodium, but I'll go ahead and add a breadstick with the spaghetti on Tuesday. That brings the Tuesday grains to 2 ounces and the weekly total to 8.5 ounces, which meets the minimum of 8 ounces. So pretty simple. Check for daily minimums and then add the daily together to get the weekly. You may be thinking, that's great, Jessica, but how are minimums calculated when multiple choices are offered? USDA has answered this question for us in a memo. The memo code is SP05-2022. The web address is on this slide, but you can just do a web search for SP05-2022 and it will come right up. This is an incredibly helpful resource that answers questions about the meal patterns. So bookmark this guide, and I highly recommend taking some time to review it because there is so much useful information in here and it will level up your menu compliance knowledge. This is addressed in question 94, and it explains that when multiple choices are offered, the minimum is calculated by determining the choice that has the lowest amount of meat alternates or grains. So the amounts aren't added together. You don't take the highest number, you take the lowest number across all options that are offered. So let's look at an example of this. In this menu, we offer 2 entree options each day, and we're going to look at each day and identify the item with the lowest amount of meats and the lowest amount of grains. For meats, on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, my minimum is 2 ounces, and on Thursday and Friday, my minimum is 1 ounce, for a weekly total of 8 ounces, which meets the minimum. For grains, on Monday and Tuesday, my minimum is 1 ounce, Wednesday is 1.5 ounces, and Thursday and Friday is 1 ounce, for a weekly total of 5.5 ounces, which does not meet the minimum of 8 ounces. Taking a closer look at each of these options, I decided to add another grain to my yogurt plate on Monday, an extra grain with my garden salad on Tuesday, and on Friday, I added a freshly baked whole grain cookie that I'm going to offer with both options as a fun treat. So now my weekly total for grains is 8.5, which meets the minimum. I want to show you another common menu that I see. There's a certain peanut butter and jelly sandwich that comes in a package and has the crust removed. It is very popular with students, and it's a great grab-and-go option to offer. Well, this product comes in 2 sizes, and the crediting for the smaller sandwich is 1 ounce of meat and 1 ounce of grain. And many schools choose to offer this as a daily option. Well, based on what we've learned in this video, if this sandwich is offered solo, my weekly total for meats and grains is going to be 5 ounces, which does not meet the minimum of 8 ounces. So on at least 3 days a week, I would want to offer another meat and grain option with this sandwich to increase the minimums, like a package of crackers and a cheese stick. Another option could be to serve the larger size of this sandwich, which credits as 2 meats and 2 grains, as long as that fits within your calorie, saturated fat, and sodium targets and your budget. I also see this at breakfast when a 1 ounce bowl of cereal is offered as an option every day. That makes the weekly total 5 ounces of grain, which does not meet the minimum of 7 to 9 ounces, depending on the grade group you're serving. Check your meal pattern chart for the minimum. So many schools will increase the daily and weekly minimum by offering additional items with the cereal bowl, like a cheese stick, a package of crackers, a yogurt cup, and for the older grades, even serving the larger 2 ounce cereal bowls. One final example I want to show you is on a menu for grades 9 through 12. If you remember back to the meal pattern chart, the daily minimum for meats and grains is 2 ounces. So you need to make sure that for this grade group, every option offered has a minimum of 2 ounces of meat and 2 ounces of grains. Looking at this example here, most entrees are 2 and 2, but on Tuesday, the spaghetti with meat sauce has only 1 ounce of grain, which does not meet the daily minimum for 9-12. So even though my weekly total meets the minimum of 10 ounces, this menu is not in compliance because the spaghetti with meat sauce does not meet the daily 2 ounce minimum. Again, I could simply offer something like a breadstick to bring the grains to 2 ounces and bring this menu into compliance. So to summarize what we've covered, to calculate the minimums for meat alternates and grains, first check for the daily minimums, and if multiple options are offered, identify the item with the lowest amount. Then determine the weekly minimums by adding together the daily minimums, and then adjust as needed by trading out entrees or adding additional items while considering things like cost and nutrients. Okay, thanks for joining me, and I hope you learned something new today.